Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. Today, we're checking out some of the best VR games as we take a look at what the PlayStation VR2 has to offer. These games will be arranged by genre to help you quickly find what you're looking for, and even if you don't own a PlayStation VR2, many of today's titles are cross-platform, plus I'm including some games that are releasing in the near future. So you might still find a great new game to check out, or at least see what the competition is up to. Now I'd love to hear down in the comments right now what your favorite VR game of all time is, and there are of course links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead, but before we jump in, this video is sponsored by eWin Gaming Chairs. Is your current chair a bit too worn out, or feel like you deserve an upgrade? eWin has 4 different styles of chairs starting at $229, plus they're currently running a 4th of July sale where you can get an additional 15% or more off. Many of eWin's gaming chairs have been designed to accommodate extra large individuals and include all the bells and whistles you're looking for, like a multi-positional adjusting armrest and the ability to lean way back. There's a link to eWin down in the description, and don't forget to use code Mateo for an additional 20% off and to help support my channel. Okay, so let's jump right into this list of the best PlayStation VR2 games. And again, this will be ordered by genre, plus I'm including upcoming titles that you want to keep an eye out for, and games I would love to see ported from the original PlayStation VR 1. Our first genre is action-adventure titles, and an obvious choice for this list is Horizon Call of the Mountain. This side story set in the Horizon universe will have you meeting Aloy, but don't be scared away if you've never played Horizon Zero Dawn. This title completely stands on its own and offers up some of the best graphics and most action-packed moments of any VR game ever. While you will do a lot of climbing, it's luckily set in these sci-fi jungle environments, and it's broken up by some epic robot fighting creature battles. The majority of this game is absolutely thrilling, and you might just have to push yourself through a little bit of climbing tedium. Now, if you're looking for some more action, I highly recommend you check out the newly released Hubris. This is another title that's featuring some of the absolute best VR graphics available, and this time you'll not only be climbing, but also swimming, platforming, puzzle solving, and battling an array of alien creatures. The storyline is a bit forgettable, but does feature some really cool moments, and my only other complaint is that the combat starts to get a bit repetitive. I still highly recommend it to any action-adventure title fans, just like I recommend developers Impulse Gear port Farpoint over to the PlayStation VR 2. This is another sci-fi themed shooter where you crash land on an alien world, but I found both the combat and storyline to be a lot more entertaining than Hubris, so this is a game I would love to re-experience on the PlayStation VR 2, or even better, get a sequel for. But a title that definitely is getting upgraded for PlayStation VR 2 is Arashi Castle of Sins. This stealth-based melee action title had a lot going for it when it released on PlayStation VR 1, but my biggest complaint was the graphics. Well, luckily they've been significantly upgraded, along with many other aspects of this game. Now I can understand if you skipped this game back when it originally released, but you should give this new release a lot more attention. Now moving on to shooters, we have the obvious first choice, and that's Pavlov. Pavlov is a highly addictive Counter-Strike clone that just keeps seeing more and more updates, and the mod community loves to develop for. Recently, they added new weapons, maps, and gameplay modes, plus the game is moving over to mod.io, so in the future we should expect to see a lot more cross-platform game modifications. Every PlayStation VR 2 shooter fan should go ahead and check out Pavlov, but if you're waiting for something new, we have Crossfire Sierra Squad and Firewall Ultra coming later this year. Sierra Squad features an action-packed single-player campaign, an online horde mode that you can play with your buddies, and a large array of 2-person co-op missions. Now, for those looking for something a bit less arcadey, Crossfire Sierra Squad recently showed off their realism mode, where the gameplay is much slower, bullets are a lot more lethal, and you'll have to be a lot more strategic on how you engage the enemy. So this game should offer something for all shooter fans, but if not, the alternative will be Firewall Ultra. Not only does this game offer up some co-op PvE, but there's also plenty of online PvP. So if you're a fan of action-packed military-style shooters, but you also enjoy competition, Firewall Ultra is going to be your go-to game. The original Firewall Zero was an absolutely beloved PlayStation VR title, and I have some insanely high hopes for their sequel. Now, if you're not a fan of competition, on our co-op shooter list, we have After the Fall. This is basically VR's version of Left 4 Dead, but instead of killing zombies, you're fighting the frozen snowbreed. The title's designed for maximum replayability with 4 players, as you'll continually unlock new weapons, upgrades, and cosmetics. As your gear improves, you're going to want to replay all the missions on harder levels to unlock even better gear. It's an absolutely addictive cycle that's an easy recommendation to any co-op shooter fan. But a co-op title you should be on the lookout for is Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord. It seems like it'll have a similar gameplay loop to After the Fall, but this time with a deeper narrative and a bit more fun. The Ghostbusters series has always been a bit whimsical, so I hope that carries over into this game. So not only will we get an addictive shooter, but also a couple laughs along the way. But if you're not looking for co-op and prefer a bit more challenge, we have the roguelike genre. First on that list is the Light Brigade, which makes you one of the last hopes in the fight against the ever-growing darkness. The Light Brigade combines World War II-like elements with both a fantasy world and powers. You'll be clearing procedurally generated levels while finding and unlocking some temporary upgrades on each run, and then working towards more powerful permanent upgrades. It's the standard roguelike formula, but it's got its very own unique flair. And speaking of unique flair, we have Until You Fall. This is one of my absolute favorite VR games, and it just made its way onto the PlayStation VR2. This is a neon-themed melee roguelike that requires you to duck, dodge, and counter enemy attacks. There's a large array of weapons with their own unique abilities that you'll both unlock and upgrade over time. This game's also quite a workout, so you'll also get the added benefit of breaking a sweat every time you play this game. Now, if you enjoy this style of action, but prefer guns and telekinetic powers, be on the lookout for Synapse. Synapse releases on July 4th, so I can't speak about it just yet, but I can say that the game goes a lot further than what I showcased in their recent demo. I'd love to say a lot more, but you know, I'm under one of those pesky embargoes. But let's move on to horror titles. So obviously that includes Resident Evil Village. The journey to save your daughter has you battling through a unique Resident Evil style array of creatures, including lycans, demonic style foes, some armored soldiers, and basically a family of vampires. Resident Evil 8 is a lot more action oriented than the previous title, and that's the main reason why Capcom should port Resident Evil 7 to the PlayStation VR2. As great as Resident Evil Village is, Resident Evil Biohazard has a much different feel. It's lighter on the action and heavier on the storytelling and horror, which actually makes it a bit more ideal for VR. Now, I personally recommend the roller coaster ride from hell, The Dark Pictures Switchback VR, as I thought it was the ultimate combination of action and jump scares. But I know some people would have preferred a port of the original Rush of Blood. Now, if you're waiting for a new VR horror title, the Resident Evil 4 remake should definitely be on your list. If you've played it on Quest 2, you know just how good this classic title can be in VR, but the remake will take things to a whole new level, and instead of playing a game with 1990s graphics, we'll be upgrading to the 2020s. The flat screen version of the Resident Evil 4 remake already received some amazing reviews, so I can't wait to try out the VR mode. Well, let's move on to a much calmer genre, and that's the platformer. Any VR gamer who's a fan of platformers has to play Moss Book 1 and 2. This game features challenging puzzles, excellent combat, stunning graphics, and an immersive storyline. By the time you complete this game, you'll feel like you truly bonded with Quill, the title's mouse protagonist, and I honestly can't overstate just how much this game blew me away, especially since I'm not really a fan of platformers. But at the same time, I also loved Astrobot Rescue Mission, so Sony really needs to port that to the PlayStation VR2 or give us a sequel. What made this title so special is the developers knew how to work with VR. They play around with scale, making you battle some truly gigantic enemies. You interact with the world in two separate ways, your main character and your third-person character, and they throw you into a lot of different environments. Astrobot is a top-notch game, and we need more of it right now. But if you just want to sit back and solve some puzzles, The Last Clockwinder is an excellent option. You'll have to use an intricate series of clones in order to restore the workings of an ancient tree. Eventually, you'll have an interconnected system of automated creatures that are growing plants, harvesting resources, and ultimately saving your clock tower. It's a truly unique experience, just like our next game, Humanity. Humanity has you taking on the role of shepherd dog, who must guide a never-ending stream of humanoid creatures. You'll tell them which directions to move, and eventually gain different abilities, making this experience feel a lot like the classic title Lemmings. Just when you think you have everything under control, you'll see a large group of people unaliving themselves by doing random things like walking off a cliff. But there's just something about the gameplay and visuals that makes this title mesmerizing. And speaking of mesmerizing, nothing's better than a giant open world to explore, and that's why the open world genre has No Man's Sky. Easily one of VR's biggest games that offers up so many different ways to play. You can go through the single player campaign, collecting resources and exploring planets, or you can just set up shop and build your own base. There's also alien creatures to interact with, a variety of vehicles to pilot, and a seemingly never-ending array of new updates coming out every few months. No Man's Sky might be the only game you ever need, unless of course you're more interested in fantasy, and that's why I want to see Skyrim ported to the PlayStation VR2. I know, I can't believe I just said that out loud, that I actually want Skyrim ported yet again. I think at this point it plays on everything from a TI-82 all the way to my toaster, but unfortunately that list doesn't include the PlayStation VR2, and people who have not tried this RPG are definitely missing out. At this point though, I would say it requires some updates, as the vanilla version is beyond bland. But you know what's not bland in VR? Sim titles. If you're a fan of realistic flying or racing, VR can be an absolutely magical experience. Get yourself a flight stick or racing wheel, and you'll be in gaming heaven. Now, currently, these titles are limited on the PlayStation VR2, but any fan of racing absolutely has to try Gran Turismo 7. It's extremely realistic, the graphics are fantastic, and there's just so much content and unlockables that you could just keep playing this game for months. And that right there was our list of the best PlayStation VR2 games. Now, I usually update these lists every 4 to 6 months, so the next one should be coming just in time for the holiday season. But until then, let me know down in the comments if I missed your favorite game, or if I even passed on a whole genre.
And that was today's video, brought to you by my dad, Mateo311. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here,
Consider subscribing.
consider
subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
We'll see you guys on next time.
We'll see you guys on next time.